Hello, welcome to Dungeon Heroes Podcast. I'm your host Justin. Today we're reviewing Atlas, Marvel Boy the Uranian, written by Jeff Parker and Felix Ruiz, published by Marvel Comics. This collection is rated T14 and it's priced at 20 US, 22.50 Canadian, which this book collects Marvel Boy the Uranian issues 1 through 3, plus 7 tales from Marvel's Vault of Golden Age Marvel Boy classics from the 50s, and 1975's Fantastic Four, issues 194 through 165. Did I say 194? I meant 164 through 165, which is written. Those are written by Roy Thomas with art by George Perez. And the Marvel Boy Classics, writers were unknown, and the art was by, the first one was Russ Heath, and the other ones were Bill Everett, which I think I've heard of Bill Everett. So this is a spin-off of Agents of Classics, which you can see the Agent of Classics books here, right? The trades. Which wouldn't mind picking up this one, because that's obviously Neil Francis Yu's art, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's Marvel Masterworks with Marvel Boy in it. And there's the book here. So the book's a little confusing because it's a reimagining of a Golden Age superhero, and inside the story of the Golden Age superhero, there's also the comic book, which it gets very meta, where they reference the old comic books, and like they constantly talk about how silly they were and how inaccurate they were, which the guy it's very Watchmen-esque, where the guy is getting a comic book made of himself, and it really makes the reviewing this book confusing, because there's two continuities I have to keep track of, which is the new story of Marvel Boy, and then there's the old Golden Age books, which they say aren't canon anymore, but I also have to review those because there's 7 issues in here, which here's where you can get to see the art for the 3-issue miniseries, and then there's the art for the Golden Age books, which is pretty cool. They're all the stories are really short. This story I thought was pretty pretty gruesome, because this guy this magician kills all these bad guys by dismembering them and then putting them back together again. It reminds me of a character called Shin from Dorohedoro, who's a sorcerer who has magic exactly like that. And there's also stories in here about communist infiltration, right? Which is the 50s. Of course, they're going to talk about that. Which at first, the first story was subtle, and then it didn't get so subtle. And here's the Fantastic Four issues where Marvel Boy is a villain, right? Which I'll get to that. So the first 3 issues, the miniseries, is a reimagining of Atlas, Marvel Boy the Uranian, which is about this superhero whose dad was half German, half scientist. His name was Matthew Grayson, but they changed his name in the Fantastic Story to Horace Grayson, who was a German rocket scientist before World War II, who wasn't a fan of Hitler's regime, and after his wife dies in an accident, which in the story here they say it was deliberate, and the Golden Age books it wasn't deliberate. So he builds a rocket, takes his infant son, and goes to space, right? Where he goes to Uranus by accident, and then there's this race of super intelligent telepaths that live there who are exiles from Earth, right? Which that's where the story differs from the Golden Age books, because the Golden Age books, they were this race of hyper intelligent beings, and they had beings that had this like um, utopia. Here they have nefarious ends, where they were exiled to Uranus like thousands of years ago, and they decide once Grayson's son grows up, which is Robert Grayson, aka Bob Grayson. They teach him telepathy. Telepathy. They make him psychic, and they give him gadgets like wristbands that in the comic book all they do is like blind people with light. Here they're kind of like power. They can also blind people with flashing light, but they can also create um, they're kind of like the Green Lantern's power rings, where they can create barriers and they can move objects and stuff like that, right? And later on in the story, he can he can fly. They give him like a belt so he can fly, and they also give him like these pills which they got the idea from the comic book to give him super strength. So the story is basically he goes to Earth to try to impress the Earth people, right? And by the way, he never has his costume in this book. I guess that's the costume he has from the Agents of Atlas stories, where his mission is basically to gain the respect of Earth, so the people from Uranus can get invited back to Earth, right? Because they were exiled there by some super beings, and if they ever try to go back, they may or may not be destroyed by the super beings. So they think there's a loophole if they get invited back, and if they ever get invited back, it could mean trouble for Earth. So after a while, Grayson figures this out and decides to cut off communications with the people from Uranus. Which there's lots of jokes about him being from Uranus. Actually, not really, but it's implied. Also, they killed his dad. And there's this. Also, there's one of the people he takes out. One of the villains he takes out is a lone shooter, which reminded me of a 50s movie. I forget what it's called. It had Boris Karloff in it, right? He also becomes friends with the people from Timely Comics who made the old Golden Age Marvel Boy comics, which like I said, they don't know who the writer was, so I guess they just made somebody else. He also fights villains like this mad scientist guy who can turn people into Neanderthals and can mind control them. He also has a woolly mammoth. That's cool. He also fights this giant robot that looks like some kind of creature, but it's actually a robot made by the military. They try to capture him because at first they think he's a communist spy, right? So the other stories in this book, there's one where he fights, the Golden Age books. The first one is like he gets sent to Earth by his father to become a superhero because Uranus is such a utopia that with their technology he can go there, be a shining example, and turn humanity away from war and onto peace. So while he comes back, which at first in this book he has like a flying saucer. Later on he gets a rocket ship called the Silver Bullet, even though his ship is like green and red. So in this one, he goes to Earth, and there's like a lost continent rises from the sea, and there's like pirates show up to try to take over the place, not knowing that there's like inhabitants of this island. people who adapted to sea life, kind of like the Atlanteans. And like Marvel Boy saves the fish people from the pirates. And then this story is basically about how there's this planet called Satania, Satana or Santanian or whatever, and the people there all have names that have Satan in them, which I thought this was weird. This story was obviously about like the communist infiltration during the Red Scare, which is what, if you actually look into it, it was actually real. There's this KGB agent who deflected to the States, who told everybody on TV in the 70s, yes, the Red Scare was actually real, right? Which, it's weird, because, like, there's also, like, the satanic Luciferian, like, stuff in this book, which they replace communism with, which I thought was weird, but then later on there's an issue about communism. So in this book, this one was my favorite, where a girlfriend of Bob Grayson goes to Sicily, which is in Sicily, which is in Italy, or Italia as they call it in the rest of the world, where her dad is an archaeologist who studies like this tomb, and the tomb is inhabited by a vampire chick and her skeleton. So like his girlfriend escapes to try to call him over to save her father and workers, which I really liked this issue. I thought that was cool. Which all these issues are really short. They're like 5 to 8 pages long. I think the reason why is because Golden Age books back then, a lot of them were anthology books. So like you had multiple characters in each issue that would have its own story. So that's why they were super short, right? This one, I forgot what this one is. Oh yeah, this one is about like some like aliens kidnap alien like criminals kidnap his dad and this chick, right? And they're both being held hostage on Uranus and Earth. So he has to choose, okay, which one is he going to save first? And he comes up with a way to save both of them, right? And they're trying to get this like life prolonging pill. This one, I totally forgot what this one was. Oh yeah, this one was about the killer magician, which Bob Grayson was sent by his dad to figure out, okay, how is this magician doing his magic, and he never figures it out. And the dude kills criminals by like a gruesome way. This one is about this rich guy who gets tricked by communists to give him money, right? And at first they give the communist country a fake name, but then they just say, oh fuck it, like it's Stalin. And this story is about clothes that are choking people to death, and like Marvel Boy has to investigate. A lot of the later stories are like detective like stories, which it turned out to be an alien trying to kill all humans, so he can like his people can like migrate there or some shit. So this is the story I was talking about, where like the 70s Fantastic Four issues, which came out in 75, right, where the Fantastic Four take on Marvel Boy, who's come back to Earth, naming himself the Crusader, who wants to kill these people at this bank because he went to them to get money so he can get like medical supplies to the planet of Uranus, and he couldn't get them in time because they denied his loan, so he had to come up with other means to raise the money, and that killed, in the meantime, all the people of Uranus dies, and so he's going around destroying branches of the bank, thinking he killed the head of the bank. It turns out he didn't. He also cucks Johnny Storm. Johnny Storm was on a date with a girl, which he was trying to keep the fact hidden that he was the Human Torch, but then she finds out and cucks him, breaks up with him. Which her name was Frankie, and she lived in Greenwich Village. So something tells me there was more to that girl than meets the eye. She was a Decepticon, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So they kill Marvel Boy at the end of this issue. So yeah. So that's the story. I don't know. I thought this book was great. The story was good. The art I thought was a little weak. It was a little pulpish. It was trying to be pulpish by being super dark when these old comics, especially, were like, super bright, colorful. And it really shows off the difference between comic books today and like old comics. That old comics, superheroes and superhero stories were more hopeful, and they were more hopeful and more bright and colorful, and they had this like bright, they were hopeful of the future back in the 50s and whatever. While today we're very dark and pessimistic. We have no hope for the future. We think the future is going to be a post-apocalyptic hellhole, and that's probably the more accurate vision of the world. But when you consider like comic books are supposed to be for kids, I think the 1950s vision of the future is probably the one we should be showing kids today. Yeah. So, and obviously, I find it funny that we talked about how we hate politics in today's comics books, and how forthright they were, and when even in the 50s the comic books were very political, especially during the World War II. But yeah, it is what it is. I know. I recommend this book. I thought the story was good. The characters were cool and everything, but and I love the whole wacky like superheroes and superpowers, super villains that he fights, which not a lot of super villains obviously, but like the problem with this book is half the book is modern, which just came out in 2010, and the other half of the book is like 1950s short stories, and then there's the 275 Fantastic Four issues, which 75 is technically Silver Age, but it was like at the tail end of the Silver Age. So it's the thing where I can only recommend this book if you like old comics. If you don't like old comics, you're probably not going to like this book, because like I said, like half this book is modern, but it takes place in the 50s, and it's like less than half the book. More than half the book is the 1950s stuff and the 75 stuff. So you're not a fan of old comics, this is probably not for you. But like, if you are a fan of old comics, I would say I would recommend this. I thought this was really cool, and I think you get a lot of bang for your buck. And I was surprised the fact I thought there was only going to be 5 issues worth of content. With the 7 Golden Age stories, like this is more like an 8-issue trade, because like those 7 stories took me like 2 hours to read, because there's so much dialogue and stuff. Not 2 hours. It was more like it felt like 2 hours. So yeah, for like almost $23, I think it's worth it. But if you're not a fan of old comics, this is probably not for you. But if you are, I think this is like a solid 7 out of 10. So I was supposed to review GoBots next, but because the Suicide Squad movie actually came out today. I thought it was coming out tomorrow, right? Which I was trying to read this, right away, and then review the Suicide Squad comics, but yeah, it's like almost 9 o'clock, so like, yeah, that's gonna have to wait till tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm gonna review the 3 Suicide comics I got, and then during the weekend I'll review GoBots, and then after that I'll start reading Squadron Supreme and reviewing that, which that might take me a week 2 weeks, maybe a month, but in the meantime, I got lots of single issues to review. I got the Wetworks comics I bought. I got the Deathmate comics I got. I even have older comics I can read, right, and review. So yeah, that's it for this review.